In the waiting room of the Peninsula, a luxury hotel in Chicago, I was reviewing my speech one last time. Outside the window, Michigan Avenue's cityscape grew more brilliant as dusk approached, with the setting sun reflecting golden light off the high-rise windows. From the 20th floor waiting room, the line of cars on Lake Shore Drive looked like tiny toys. In the room softly lit by crystal table lamps, I continued what must have been my umpteenth proofreading. The habits I'd cultivated as an editor wouldn't leave me even at a time like this. I pored over every word, infusing each with meaning. "Jenny, are you still at it?" My mother Patricia walked in, her perfectly set platinum blonde hair gleaming. Her elegant bearing, wrapped in an Hermes tweed jacket, befitted her status as a pillar of Chicago society. Behind her stood my sister Rachel, dressed in a pristine Vera Wang wedding gown. The diamond necklace adorning her décolletage was, naturally, from our family jewelry store's most exclusive collection. "Yes, just final checks," I replied, slightly adjusting my black-rimmed glasses. My simple navy dress was appropriately understated for my position as editor-in-chief at Riverside Publishing. The single pearl at my neck cast a soft glow, like a symbol of the choices I'd made over my 35 years of life. Today was my sister's wedding. The groom was Christopher Bennett, an up-and-coming Chicago investor who was also an important business partner of our father's company, Morgan Properties. He was the perfect groom, living in a mansion in the North Shore district and holding membership at the Chicago Golf Club. 300 guests should already be gathering in the grand ballroom. Everything was perfectly arranged: special catering from the Waldorf Astoria, a string quartet from the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, and floral arrangements by the venerable Phillips Flowers. "My, that's quite long," Mother peered at my speech draft. As the owner of the high-end boutique chain, Morgan Boutiques, she always had an appraising look in her eyes. That gaze was now directed mercilessly at my manuscript. "Oh, Jenny, you never change. Always so painfully meticulous," Rachel smirked. My sister, with her model-perfect proportions, had built an impressive track record as sales director of our family-owned jewelry chain, Morgan Jewelry, through her outstanding social skills. And above all, she was the apple of our parents' eye. Our father, William, had established a firm position in Chicago's upper society as the owner of a real estate development company. Even the gray beginning to show in his hair only served to underscore his authority as distinguished silver. As the eldest daughter of this family, however, I had walked a path slightly different from my parents' expectations. Despite achieving reasonable success as editor-in-chief at a prestigious publishing house, my position within the family had always felt like that of an outsider. The atmosphere in the waiting room grew heavier by the minute. Outside the window, black limousines arrived one after another at the hotel, with formally dressed guests stepping out. Ladies' cocktail dresses swayed elegantly in the evening light. The sound of champagne corks popping could be heard from somewhere in the distance. I turned my eyes back to the manuscript. I felt anew the weight of the words I was about to speak. My palms were slightly damp with perspiration. Everyone probably thinks this will be an ordinary wedding speech. But it won't be. Everything that began 5 years ago will finally come to light today. The truth we've built under the mask of family. I quietly stood up and adjusted the collar of my navy dress in the mirror. The Peninsula Chicago's grand ballroom was as resplendent as a fairy tale. Four massive crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, illuminating the vast space that could easily accommodate 300 people. The white and gold decor caught the soft evening light, highlighting its elegance even more. 6-meter-high walls were draped with elegant silk, and through the gaps between them, large windows revealed Lake Michigan's blue waters gleaming in the sunset. By the grand piano, a string quartet selected from the Chicago Symphony Orchestra was playing Mozart. Pure white roses and calla lilies arranged by Phillips flowers were perfectly positioned throughout the room. Baccarat crystal glasses were lined up precisely on the tables, with Waldorf Astoria's special hors d'oeuvres artfully presented like works of art. Chicago's high society representatives took their seats one after another in the 300 Tiffany chairs. The Harrison couple, real estate moguls who were father's business partners, members of the Wilson family who served on the Chicago Art Institute's board, and the social elite who frequented mother's boutique. The ladies' designer dresses and sparkling jewels created what seemed like a symphony of light throughout the room. I stood near the reception, watching the guests file in while mentally rehearsing my speech. "Jenny, shouldn't you be taking your seat too?" I nodded slightly at Mother's voice from behind me. On my way to the main table, I caught Christopher's eye. I quietly took my seat and pulled out my prepared speech. At that moment, Rachel shot me a sharp glance. "You're not planning to read such a long speech, are you?" Rachel's voice contained obvious mockery. The pure white Vera Wang dress accentuated her perfect proportions even more. At her neck, the diamond necklace from Morgan Jewelry's most exclusive collection gleamed assertively. "Yes, this is my prepared speech," I answered, trying to appear calm, but couldn't hide the trembling in my hands. "How boring. Why not just improvise? Wouldn't that be more moving?" My sister smiled maliciously and suddenly reached for my manuscript. It happened in an instant. Rachel's hands ruthlessly tore my speech apart, sending it flying like confetti. She tossed the torn bundle of papers to the floor with a satisfied expression, and I watched as some pieces fluttered all the way to nearby tables. "That's right, Jenny. You're always like this, too stiff," Mother laughed softly beside me, shrugging her shoulders as if to condone Rachel's actions. The gesture suggested I was some foreign element unable to read the room. The atmosphere in the venue froze for a moment. Several guests turned toward us, but quickly averted their gazes as if to smooth things over. In high society etiquette, one should avoid interfering in another family's unsightly moments. I slowly stood up. With trembling hands, I grasped my champagne glass. In the corner of the room, a photographer positioned himself to capture the moment. Taking a deep breath, I surveyed the room. 300 pairs of eyes turned to me at once. The string quartet's music quietly faded, and the room was enveloped in silence. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for gathering here today for my sister Rachel's wedding." My voice was steadier than I had expected. After a pause, I continued. "What I'm about to share is actually about a truth that everyone in our family knows." At that moment, my sister's expression tensed, and Mother's smile froze. Father furrowed his brow, and Christopher, the groom, changed color. The elegant atmosphere that had pervaded the venue suddenly transformed into one filled with tension. "It was spring, 5 years ago," my voice echoed through the silent venue. The hand holding my glass was no longer trembling. Rather, my conviction about the truth I was about to tell strongly supported my heart. At the time, I was living with my husband, James Sullivan, in a Lincoln Park townhouse. Those were dreamlike days, surrounded by the scent of geraniums blooming on our brownstone steps and the warmth of stained glass windows glowing in the morning sun. As I slowly wove my words, I recalled those happy days from 5 years ago. James had been building a successful career as a senior vice president at J.P. Morgan Chase, becoming a pillar of the M&A division. I too had begun establishing my reputation as an editor at Riverside Publishing, gaining attention for discovering young writers. On weekends, we'd select fresh ingredients at the nearby Green City Market and enjoy cooking together. I still fondly remember the aroma of James's special risotto. During vacations, we'd spend time at our summer house by Lake Michigan, sharing our dreams for the future under the dappled sunlight. Warm smiles appeared around the venue. The eyes of older couples in particular grew misty with nostalgia. Everyone probably thought this was the introduction to a happy reminiscence. However, the truth I was about to tell would take a very different direction. The changes began when my sister Rachel suddenly started visiting our home frequently. What started as monthly visits soon increased to 2 or 3 times a week. At these words, Rachel's expression tightened. I could see her body trembling slightly in her Vera Wang dress. Her eyes flickered anxiously beneath her tiara. At first, I thought it was natural family interaction. Rachel began frequently seeking James's opinion about Morgan Jewelry's business strategy, and our parents encouraged this. When invited to dinner, I gladly accepted, valuing family time. Father frowned unhappily, and Mother, though maintaining her elegant appearance, gripped her napkin tightly. I could see her Hermes scarf gradually becoming distorted under her fingertips. I still vividly remember that day. It was a cold night in February. The snow covering Chicago's streets kept piling up, just like our relationships. I paused for a moment and took a deep breath. The atmosphere in the venue grew even tenser. The chandelier light seemed to shine even more brightly, as if illuminating the truth. Having an unexpectedly late dinner, I witnessed an unexpected scene. In a private room of a 3-star restaurant, my sister and James were dining together in an intimate atmosphere. It was wrapped in an air far too intimate to be just a business dinner. A slight murmur arose from the venue. The socialites wore expertly performed expressions of surprise. However, their eyes held a serious light. Particularly sharp gazes came from the regular customers of Mother's boutique. The next day, when I went to consult with my parents, Father and Mother showed remarkably cold attitudes. It was as if everything was proceeding according to plan. The memory of that moment came back as if it were yesterday. I began to recount in detail what had happened in Father's study, surrounded by heavy mahogany furnishings. I can still see the snow continuing to fall outside the window, covering the ground like a white carpet. Father, still facing his desk, said, "Jenny, emotions shouldn't interfere with business. Rachel and James's relationship is important for our company's future. You might not understand, but this is a necessary decision for the family's prosperity." The atmosphere in the venue froze. Among business partners and social notables, small murmurs spread. Father's face grew increasingly pale. The sound of his expensive fountain pen rolling off the desk echoed strangely in the silence. Mother went even further, declaring, "Rachel deserves a much more suitable partner than you had. As the heir to the Morgan family, she needs a marriage partner with more power. You've never been able to meet the family's expectations." The women in the venue gasped at the words of Mother, known as the owner of a luxury boutique. The true nature of Patricia Morgan, who had reigned as the flower of Chicago society, was now being revealed. Her Chanel twin set cast an unnatural gleam under the lights. What followed was like a perfectly crafted script. James and Rachel's relationship quickly became the talk of Chicago. Their secret meetings at Gold Coast cafes, chance encounters at art museums, everything had been calculated. And before the power of the Morgan family, my 10-year marriage crumbled in just 3 months. I took a breath and surveyed the room. 300 eyes watched, holding their breath. I noticed pieces of the torn speech still scattered on the floor. Strangely, that sight strengthened my resolve even more. However, this isn't just a story about infidelity and divorce. Rather, it was part of a business plan that had been carefully orchestrated over years. A perfect plan crafted for the benefit of the Morgan family. At these words, Christopher's face changed color. Beside him, Rachel trembled slightly. Her Vera Wang dress quivered. After my marriage to James fell apart, he married Rachel. Then, brilliantly, he was appointed to the board of Morgan Properties. He even became involved in managing Morgan Jewelry. Everything was a perfect business alliance to increase the Morgan family's corporate value. Taking up my champagne glass, I slowly turned toward Christopher. His Armani tuxedo cast an unnatural shadow under the lighting. Yes, Christopher. The path you're about to walk is exactly the same one James walked 5 years ago. As the young CEO of Bennett Investments, you too were selected as part of the Morgan family's business plan. I paused for a moment. The blood drained from the groom's face. This happened a year ago, at the Chicago Art Institute's gala party. Christopher's face grew even paler. He must have understood all too well the meaning of my words. That night, I happened to be seated at the same table as Christopher, who was drawing attention as the young CEO of Bennett Investments. Starting with conversations about art investment, we eventually developed a deep bond. A soft sigh escaped from the venue. The society regulars must have already realized that this coincidence was anything but random. Friday lunches at Millennium Park. Holiday shopping on Michigan Avenue. Concerts at Symphony Center. It was like a movie romance. I lowered my gaze to my glass. My reflection in it appeared slightly distorted. And last Christmas. In the penthouse suite of the Drake Hotel, Christopher proposed to me. Outside the window, the Lake Shore Drive night view sparkled. Rachel showed obvious agitation. Her bouquet trembled minutely. Ironically, the ring was a special order from Morgan Jewelry. A 3-carat emerald-cut diamond. It radiated perfect brilliance, symbolizing our love. A small cry arose from the back of the venue. One of Morgan Jewelry's regular customers must have remembered that ring. However, a week later, in Father's study, I learned that another business plan was in progress. I looked at Father. His usually dignified expression was now twisted with bitterness. A merger plan with Bennett Investments. The key to its success was Christopher's marriage to Rachel. A perfect recreation of the events from 5 years ago. Mother shuddered slightly. Her Hermes scarf was disheveled at her neck. My engagement to Christopher didn't last a month. A chance encounter with Rachel was orchestrated, and once again, a new romantic scandal entertained society. Christopher tried to stand up, but Rachel grabbed his arm firmly to stop him. And today, this wedding is perfectly staged as a celebration of the business alliance between the Morgan and Bennett families. You might call it the ultimate M and a strategy to maximize corporate value. The atmosphere in the venue instantly froze. Corporate executives among the guests exchanged glances as if checking documents. But this isn't the end. I slowly took out a document from my handbag. Shocking content was recorded on the expensive letterhead. Over the past year, using my experience as a publishing editor, I conducted an investigation. In the Morgan family's corporate strategy over the past 20 years, there were exactly 7 cases of similar chance encounters and destined marriages. Father suddenly stood up from his chair. "Jenny, stop." But my voice continued, even stronger. Each time, the Morgan family acquired new business territories and increased their corporate value. But behind this, how many lives were trampled? A Chicago Tribune reporter was frantically taking notes. Even the luxury hotel staff stood frozen, watching this dramatic development. In the envelopes at your places, you'll find detailed evidence of all of this. I wanted the truth to be known to everyone in Chicago society and to our many business partners. The sound of envelopes being opened echoed throughout the venue. Inside were detailed records of all the evidence I had gathered over a year. This isn't just a family scandal. This is a serious matter of corporate ethics in Chicago's business world. Rachel stood up and shouted, "Lies. It's all made up." But her voice faded weakly before the weight of truth that already dominated the venue. Business partners, investors, please see for yourselves. And please reconsider your future relationships with the Morgan family. I quietly set down my glass. The venue was enveloped in silence as if time had stopped. And finally, Christopher. The groom looked at me with trembling eyes. "It's not too late. You don't need to make your life a pawn in this distorted corporate strategy." The way the ballroom dissolved into chaos was like watching a sandcastle being swallowed by waves. The luxury flowers scattered on the pure white tablecloths maintained their beauty, but had already lost their meaning. So it's all over now. A week later, I stood by the window of my condominium overlooking Lake Michigan. The waves sparkling in the morning sun seemed to herald the beginning of new days. Events unfolded with surprising swiftness. The Securities and Exchange Commission's investigation, based on the evidence I provided, extended to the entire Morgan family corporate group. The Chicago Tribune reported on this historic scandal day after day. The dark side of Chicago's elite family, lives traded for corporate value. The headlines exposed years of truth to the light of day. Rachel flew to New York immediately after breaking off her engagement. Having lost her position as sales director at Morgan Jewelry, she vanished from the public eye. The last time I saw her, as she boarded her private jet, she had lost her usual haughty expression. Rumors quietly circulated in society that her Vera Wang wedding dress had been sold to a high-end consignment store. Father faced harsh questioning at the Morgan Properties shareholders meeting. Criticized for corporate governance failures, he was forced to step down as chairman. His once graying hair had turned completely white in just a few months. They say he now spends hours praying at a North Shore church every Sunday. Mother's Boutique saw a mass exodus of regular customers. Patricia Morgan's name no longer appears on Chicago society invitations. She now lives quietly at her Arizona villa. I hear her entire Hermes scarf collection has been donated to charity. Christopher ultimately chose truth. He fully cooperated with the SEC investigation, testifying candidly about his involvement. Bennett Investments is trying to reinvent itself under new management with greater transparency. Was this really the right thing to do? Kate, a young editor at Riverside Publishing, asked me this in the office. Outside the window, Chicago's streets were wrapped in their usual bustle. It was a necessary choice, I answered quietly. My desk, now as vice president after being promoted from editor-in-chief, was piled with new manuscripts. Among them was my debut work based on these events. The working title, Corporate Empire Brides, danced across the cover. 3 years have passed. Now, as president of Riverside Publishing in my new office facing Michigan Avenue, I focus on nurturing young writers. Corporate Empire Brides became a New York Times bestseller and won numerous literary awards. Most of the royalties are donated to a fund supporting corporate crime victims. Recently, I had an unexpected reunion. I ran into Christopher at the opening of the Chicago Art Institute's new wing. He now works in technology venture investment based in San Francisco. I heard the woman on his arm was an associate professor at Stanford University. Thank you, he said softly to me as we parted. Those words contained no trace of our past feelings, only pure gratitude. I heard Rachel opened a small jewelry shop in Paris. According to Mother, she's trying to build something on her own for the first time in her life. Father recently established a charity organization, focusing on corporate ethics education. Mother spends her days quietly but fulfillingly in her Arizona community. And this spring, I met someone new. He's a lawyer working for an environmental protection organization, a man with genuine passion and solid ethical principles. On weekends, we go to farmers markets together to pick out organic vegetables. Such simple happiness feels invaluable to me. Lake Michigan, visible from my office window, still shines beautifully. Its waves seem to gently wash away memories of the past while announcing the beginning of a new story. Speaking the truth sometimes comes at a great cost. But I still believe that choice was right. Family bonds may have broken, but everyone gained the opportunity to live their lives sincerely. I quietly stood up and reached for my coat. Outside, the soft spring sunlight gently embraced Chicago's streets. Another new day was about to begin.